Lori Cardell. Howard Sherman. Well, we want to say thank you for taking some time to speak with us this evening. So let's start off easy. How did you both get involved in the film?
Well, is this working?
Turn the button on.
Okay, there it is. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Yeah, Michael just asked how I got involved in the film. Well, actually, my father was in the original Night of the Living Dead. He had a show called Chiller Theater in Pittsburgh, and it was he was one of the first horror hosts in the country. And anyway, so George and his buddies used to watch my dad's show on Saturday nights, and so he said he got the idea of making this horror film, George. So he asked my dad to be in it and help him, and my dad plugged the heck out of it once it was made. And so I knew George when I was like in the 8th grade. I went to see the opening of Night of the Living Dead.
Cool.
I was terrified. I hated horror movies back then. I felt bad because my cousins would come from out of town to watch my dad's show, and I would just, I don't know, I got anxiety. I had panic attacks and everything. But anyway, so fast forward, I studied acting at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and yeah, it's a good school for theater. And I moved to New York and did a lot of theater and TV and stuff. I did a couple soap operas, and I did a play by Craig Lucas, and it was called Reckless. And the character that I played was on stage the whole entire time. And George and Richard Rubenstein came to see this play, and it was a brand new play. It's now a play that's done everywhere. I mean, in schools and all kinds of places. And but anyway, so George saw me in that, and I got to rekindle my friendship. I'm who I am, and George loved my father, and he said, I'm writing this movie, and I have this character, and I'd be really interested in you playing it. So it was like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool. So it was a different script. A lot of you probably know the first one. There were a lot of wading in swamps. Sarah was going to be wading in a lot of swamps, and I was just terrified about the snakes in the swamps. But that's a long story, but that's my involvement. And,
I got the job the same way I get every job, almost. I auditioned for it, and I had no idea really what I was auditioning for. I had seen Night of the Living Dead and really liked it years before, and the thing is that the character on the page, because he has no lines, there's just an occasional line of description, but it's not very clear what he is or who he is or how he's supposed to behave. I mean, his chief function in the script that I read before I auditioned was killing the bad guy at the end. And anyway, I've always meant to ask George about this because I did something I thought rather bold at the audition, is that I knew in advance that they were going to have me eat in the audition, that he was supposed to take a bite of something and eat it. And it was in the scene that I was auditioning for. And they never provide you with anything at auditions. You're just supposed to mime it, And I, without telling the casting director, I got a turkey leg, and I just kind of hid it behind my back. And when Georgia was not there; they were just videoing the audition. And when the moment came the reason why I hid it is because you're always afraid to ask permission because they might say no. So just do it. And then if they really don't want it for some reason, they'll cut it out. But So when the moment came, I whipped out the turkey leg and I really just plowed into it with savage intensity. And I've always thought that that's why I got the job, because there wasn't really much else to do. And the character of Bub I hadn't developed in any way. I didn't have the movement or any of that particularly. And, but I've always meant to ask George if that was the trick. But I found out, you know, some weeks later that I had the offer, so that was how I did it.
I remember though watching you and George work on the character, you know, in the hallways or you'd sit at a bar, and it was fascinating. He loved Bob and he loved working with you in developing that character.
Well, he really gave me the key clues to the character, which was that he wanted Bub to have an innocence about him. And George had mentioned, he said, like an infant, like a baby that's first born. And it just so happened that a friend of mine had just had a baby. And I spent 20 minutes or a half an hour just watching the baby. And what became evident is that they don't even know that these things that are wiggling out there belong to them.
Yeah.
They don't even, you know, it's completely the kind of random, spastic sort of movement that an infant does simply because the nerves are firing and, you know, it's literally exploring its own body and discovering, kind of gave me an idea for how Bub should move. But George was the one who, you know, indirectly suggested that. Yeah, but it was fun working with him.
Yeah.
He was very generous to her.
That's for sure.
So Day of the Dead was the third film in the Dead series, kind of like, in my opinion, the apex of the series. Did you guys feel any added pressure with the success of the two prior films?
I didn't. I don't know. It was its own thing, and it was a job that I looked forward to creating. I didn't even think about that. You know, it was noticeable though, when I don't know if you feel this, Howard, but when Day came out, that a lot of people thought it would be like Dawn of the Dead, and expected something along those lines, and a lot of people were disappointed that it wasn't like Dawn, but it found its audience, and you know, it's really hung around a long time. So I didn't think about it.
No, I didn't either. I just, you know, it's all about,
Yeah,
you
the
know,
work.
playing the character, you know, trying to make it real.
So filmed in the Wampum Mines, talk about some of the challenges that you guys faced working in those mines.
I think it was probably, I think Lori probably, because you were there almost all the time.
Right.
I would work for a day or two, and then I'd have 2 or 3 days off, and so it didn't. I mean, I was so claustrophobic underneath all the makeup that the claustrophobia of the mine didn't affect me at all.
But we all got sick a lot. We had, there was one scene, I think, at the Ritz, and I'm in the back with Terry's doing a long scene about the tomb and the cave stuff, you know, that whole, talking about all the archives that it held, and about the world and what it's going to be, and I was so sick in that scene. I had like 104 temperature.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I had a big pimple on my face. And they had to reshoot the scene because of that pimple. They really did.
Really?
Yeah, but it was bad, and we were all sick. In fact, George has like this respiratory thing that all of us. I mean, I have bad asthma. Honestly, it was limestone cave, and we would breathe that dust in, and it was wet, so it was a lot, you know, mold and stuff. But it really was great to act in because it just gave so much to the atmosphere. Helped us a lot as actors.
So Lori, in the opening scene with the wall of hands, can you tell us about setting up that scene and the progression and what happened filming that scene?
Well, they made this plastic kind of styrofoam wall. There was a room that was a hard wall, and we shot in that room. And then the set designer made like a hard, I don't know how big it was, maybe like as big as the screen. And it was on, so anyway, the first take, they had like these holes in it in the back. And so there was a layer of very thin paper that the hands would shoot out from. But the first time they shot it, they didn't anticipate that their hands coming through would knock the whole thing on my head. And you know, they built that set. So it was expensive to do and beautiful, but it fell on me. I mean, the whole thing, you know, so they had to rebuild it. And of course it worked then, but yeah, it was a fascinating scene to do. And I thought it was so scary, actually. It was a really scary scene. Now it's sort of, everybody knows it, but at the time, the audiences, when they saw it, really flipped out.
So I had the honor of interviewing George Culture Shock we did a few years ago, and I asked him about Sarah, and he said that the character was based as an apology for Barbara, because Barbara was so catatonic the entire time. So talk about being really the first female lead in a Romero film that was powerful and empowered. Talk about that character.
Yeah, well, it was an honor. It's funny that it's an apology because women, I mean, that's what it was though in the 60s. You know, oh my God, the monsters are coming after me. And in the 80s, it was, Sigourney Weaver had done Alien, and it was a time where the strong woman was being depicted in different art and film, although in the horror world, of course not. And of course, Alien was this big budget movie, and I felt it was quite an honor to play the part. My voice is very low. I'm very tall, and I always play, you know, characters that sort of lend themselves to my voice. Is all I could say. I mean, I could do other characters, you know, but this character, really, I just felt her. I felt her. He saw me in a comedy, which is funny though. But yeah, it was quite an honor to play that. I was very, very lucky. That's interesting. I got an apology to Barbara.
That's a cool character. Mr. Sherman, can you walk us through the makeup process for Bub, getting into that every day?
Well, it was really fascinating. I'd never experienced anything like that before. The first thing in fact, it was the first thing that happened right after, it seemed like days after I got the offer, and I accepted it. And I had to fly to Pittsburgh and have a set of teeth made. And Tom Savini was there, and he did just exactly what a dentist does. He puts that gummy stuff in your mouth that gets hard, and he made a mold of my upper and lower, all the teeth. And he cast a life mask of me. And that basically is, they cover your face with that same kind of gummy, it's a kind of a gummy residue that gets hard, or not, it's rubbery, but then they put a plaster mold over that so that the overall shape is not distorted, because the stuff that's on your skin is flexible still. And from that, they cast a life mask of me, my face in repose, in plaster. That was handed over to this very talented, young at the time, makeup artist named John Vulich, who unfortunately has recently passed away. Yeah, I just found out a couple of months ago. He subsequently became a very, very successful makeup artist and special effects artist. But he sculpted the face. He sculpted you. In other words, he put a layer of clay on this plaster life mask of my face. It was probably 1/8 of an inch to maybe 1/4 of an inch thick throughout, and it was my face and neck and the top of my chest. Then they made a mold of that, And between the two molds, my own actual face in plaster is one half, and the mold of the bub's face is the other half. They put those two together and they inject foam latex. And that is a wonderful substance that behaves very, very much like human flesh. When you glue it to someone's face and they move their face around, it behaves like skin. And they made probably 50 of those masks, and in makeup every day they would apply that mask to my face using surgical adhesive, and then they'd make it up. They'd paint it and apply actual makeup and do all kinds of things to bring out the sculptural features. And I would say one of my most vivid recollections from that whole experience was the first time I stood in front of a mirror in full makeup and, you know, moved my face around. It was eerie because it looked real. It didn't look like I was wearing makeup. It looked like I had become that creature. And that was kind of when the character first started developing, because suddenly, I'm in fact, now that I think of it, like most of my character work, I happened standing there looking in a mirror, you know, because it was such a discovery of what you could do with this, especially once they put the teeth in. It was gnarly, awful, horrible teeth. So.
One of the scenes that sticks out to me is when Bub finds Logan dead. Talk about how you were able to really show emotion but still keep the fact that Bub was a zombie. How were you able to do that?
Well, that was the hardest scene to shoot, as I recall. We tried we shot it, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 takes, and we couldn't find the right, somehow it just didn't quite, it just wasn't working. And it was really distressing to me because everything had worked really easily, very automatically up to that point. And it's such a...
Wasn't that space tight? I remember that space was kind of tight.
I just remember it because I didn't have anything really to do. I mean, when a character just looks and he doesn't, you know, we just tried different things and none of them really were working. And when I finally grabbed the chain, because the chain was around my neck and I started slashing with the chain, then it all kind of fell into place. And somehow that activity carried the moment, you know.
I still get teary-eyed when I see that. I think that's such a great scene. No, really, it's very emotional.
Well, that's the question of him being a zombie and zombies shouldn't have emotions. We'd already violated that really from the first scene in which I got scared when he pointed the gun at me. And you know, the fact that Bub was a unique zombie, I think we had just allowed that he was capable of things that your run-of-the-mill zombie was not capable of.
They're learning.
They're learning, yeah.
So can either of you remember filming a scene that actually didn't make the movie? Any behind the scenes or cut scenes that you can tell us about?
No, I don't.
It's because I'm old and it's been a long time
Yeah.
ago, but no, I don't remember, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It was pretty lean. I mean, the script was, everything was necessary. And I don't remember any excess, you know, that we had to cut out.
No.
That's a good question. Yeah.
So you both got to work with Richard Liberty quite a bit. Talk about what he was like to work with.
Oh, he was lovely. He was a lovely man. In fact, Richard, I just loved him. He called me one day. This is right before he died. He said, "I'm doing these things. It's really interesting. These it's called the convention, And you get some pictures. I mean, really, I don't think, they were just starting, you know? And he said, it's so much fun, Lori, you have to come with me. And I said, well, that would be fun. I said, you mean they really like the movie? You know, it's like, yeah, they do. And he died shortly after that, so he didn't get the privilege of enjoying you all. And, you know, as much as we get to enjoy it. I feel sad with that, but it was fun to work with. He was an old theater guy too, and he worked very hard. And he had it was hard. I mean, some of those scenes, because it was repetitive and he had his act kind of crazy, and it's not easy to do that, you know, because you always honor the writing, so you never make anything up unless some wonderful thing happens, and George was pretty good about that, but it was so wonderful to watch him work and stay true to the lines and the story, and have that frazzled kind of attitude around, you know, in that character, doing the, you know, progressing the plot. He was a good actor. I respected him a lot.
Yeah, it was fun, particularly shooting the thing that struck me about Richard. You know, different people, everyone has their own rhythm in real life. I mean, not just actors, but some people are just wound very tightly and they have a real fast rhythm. I mean, just this rapidity with which people speak. I tend to be sort of a slow talker in the general spectrum of human speech. Richard was really, he just had a real fast energy about him. He was real quick. And the scene that begins with him teaching me how to work the tape recorder when I have the headphones on, wasn't in the original script, because after a couple of days shooting, George had come up to me and he said, I want this character in the movie more, so if you have any ideas for anything that would be interesting, we'll see if we can find a way to put Bub in the movie more than is in the script. In those days, I jogged a lot with headphones, listening to music, and one day I was out on a run and I thought, what would Bub think of headphones and music? That would be an interesting thing. And I suggested it to George, and he came up with this idea. The scene was there already of where I eat a bucket of meat, but we began the scene with him teaching me how to operate the tape recorder. Well, when we shot it, and I don't think it ever got written down, George just sort of explained it to us. This is the way it'll happen, you know, you grab his arm and then, you know, then he shows you how to turn the music, you react to the music, and then he teaches you. Well, the teaching was because Richard is very quick, and Richard showed me his finger and then pointed to the thing. And I'm a zombie, it's too fast for me. And I just looked at him, like, what? And and I did that. It's a basic strategy that actors learn at some point in their careers, is just stay true to your character and react believably. I mean, you can't do this if you're doing a play in the middle of the play and, you know, an actor does something that doesn't work for you. But in rehearsal, and we were still rehearsing, that's dutifully looking as if, even though I knew that it would be wrong for my character, I just continued to look at him, and he realized, and then he slowed down. And it took like 3 or 4 passes before he got it. I don't remember if George said to slow down. It seems to me that it just happened. But I just kept looking at him like a dumb animal until he very slowly brought his finger to the tape recorder, and then I was able to believably, you know, make the connection. But
That's cool.
yeah.
Great story. So during research, this might kind of tie into my last question about other scenes. there was an original script that couldn't get made exactly. I think that you had a scene in the original. Can you talk about some of the nuances between those two and why the original script couldn't get on the film?
Yeah, I think it was budget, really. George, the first script had a lot of explosions and a lot of explosions. And it was just very, very expensive. So I know in that one, Sarah was a good character, but she wasn't, it was a lot of effects. And what happened was it became, with the second script when George was writing it, it became more character-centric, and I was just happy I didn't have to go with those damn snakes in the swamps. No, but as an actress, it was lucky for us, lucky for me. But yeah, it was just way too expensive. And I think Day of the Dead was made for $3 or $5 million, I can't remember. But it was, at that time, it was kind of a lot for a small film, independent film. But now it's kind of funny to think about that. But I don't know, the other one would have been much more expensive. And George was happy that he made the one he did. He loved me. He always talked about it. It was his favorite one to us. Oh, did you hear that from George?
Yeah.
And
I thought
we got
you'd
so
say that
close.
to all the zombies.
Yeah, right. we got very close, all of us, because we were in those conditions, and it was like 3 months in that cave, something like that.
Yeah.
And then went down to Florida to shoot the exteriors, and boy, that felt great.
So you both also worked with Joe Pilato, who played the role very intensely.
Right.
As an actor, how do you work with someone like that so you don't get lost in the scene?
As a matter of fact, I was thinking about rhythm when you were talking about rhythm. Well, you and I have a similar rhythm to us, right? And I thought, wow, if Joe was here, oh my God, it would be like so different. But anyway, well, I had a hard time because I was a lot taller than Joe, and but he, just a hard time because I was always kind of laughing because, not always laughing, but he had to wear lifts in his boots to play with me. He could have made him just small, I guess, and a bit taller. But George, so in the scene where we're in that big, I don't know what you would call that, like where the tables were in that scene where he said he was going to shoot me. He had these lifts in his shoes, and I'm sitting there and having to act all whatever, and he was like flomping around on those things, and I kept breaking tape because I kept laughing, But no, it was great acting with him. His character was over the top, and at first I thought, oh, this is a little bit too much, But it really worked. It worked. I think it did. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. So as an actor, it's always fun because he too was a theater actor, and it's about the connection. It's like what you were saying with Richard. Although film is shot so differently, and there's a lot that's different, and it's so technical. But you get to really connect with these people, with the other actors, and in a way that's very creative.
Anybody out there have a question? Or is it okay? I'll bring it over to you.
You were mentioning earlier about the scene where you find, your father and the chain, and what always struck me about that scene is when you come up, it's like you're so proud that you figured out how to get off the chain. And I was wondering, you were talking about how you had to do multiple takes, and did you say, George, we should do this, or was that something that George suggested?
It was something that happened in the moment. I remember being my recollection is, it's all a little fuzzy, it was a long time ago, but my recollection is, in the script it just said Bub escapes, and I said, how does he escape? Why does he escape now? If he can escape, if it's that easy to escape, shouldn't he have escaped a long time ago? These are the kinds of questions that actors ask. And he just I don't know, how do you think he should escape? And so that's why at the beginning of that earlier sequence, I got the idea of that I'm licking the chain, that I've splattered blood on it, and I'm fiddling around with it, and then it comes loose by accident. Because that was just an important thing, the illogic of just suddenly he gets away, you know? So that explained, how I got away. And I brought that into the next scene with, I don't know, it was just sort of a spontaneous thing. The moment that I saw him there, it was like, look what I did, you know? And I think it was just a spontaneous moment. And the reason why that was there was really the other scene. It was how I escaped. That's what I was thinking about. And I didn't know yet that I would need the chain in order to make the emotional reaction make sense to me. You know, other actors would have found something else, but the chain was the thing that worked for me.
I think that Bub is one of the greatest monsters. Really, I think it's up there with fantastic. It is such a great character. Really wonderful. He did a great job. He did a great job.
Well, I had some great stuff to work with. I mean, I have to, in all humility, say, I mean, people say very lovely things to me about my work in this character. I'm the only zombie that had a storyline. You know, the vast majority of zombies, they're just, you know, they're extras with, you know, looking for lunch. And I actually had I had material, I had a story to work with, so I had a character, and that makes all the difference, obviously.
Gentleman here.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for coming out. Sorry, I'm really tired. As I'm sure everybody in this room, like, Day of the Dead is one of the better horror movies ever made. It's really underrated. It's very great. And Bub is an amazing character. And it really has, like, it shows the performance is through the makeup. You don't speak a lot, and you really have to emote. What kind of preparation did you do to get into the role, knowing that you were going to be not just your average killer or average monster?
Well, again, standing in front of the mirror, and I mean, the first thing I did is I stood in front of the mirror and I did this. I went, just to see what it did. And what I discovered is that I had to do very little. I didn't have to exaggerate. The beauty of that, not only foam latex, but the real artistry of the makeup, of the sculpture that John Vulich made. It was very easy. So I basically just had to play the character. I just had to play the reality of, as I imagine it, of, you know, all this stuff is dead, but it still sort of works, but not very well. What would that feel like? What does that look like? And that was just, you know, trying to make it real.
Yeah, George always trusts his actors too, which is very nice for an actor. So you get to really try things.
Yeah, the worst is when you have a director who micromanages, and you know that tends to shut down the creative.
Oh, it does.
Hi. So they kind of allude to that Bub has like he's got a backstory, you know. Oh, he must have been in the military or whatever. Did you ever develop like an actual backstory for that character?
Not in any great detail, but I always imagined that he was a defrocked priest who took up poetry and got a motorcycle.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and then there was an episode in the military. I think I fragged my commanding officer. So, I mean, I have, as a zombie, I only have dim recollections. Those were the principal episodes of his life.
Anybody else want to ask a question?
Up front, Drew.
Once again, thanks for coming out. With zombies being more popular than ever now, with stuff like The Walking Dead, iZombie, and Bub's character also making a cameo in The Walking Dead.
Well, it wasn't me.
No, I'm not.
My costume, my wardrobe
Oh.
made
I
it.
wanna be
Yeah.
a replicant, whatever. But
Yeah, I was made that, and people pointed it out like that's a great honor. I'm available.
they should have got you. They should have got you.
Howard, this is the first time we got to interview you, and the gentleman in the back asked about a backstory. Did you ever think, just out of curiosity, after you shot Rhodes as Bub, what happened to Bub?
I imagine Bub came upon, of course this didn't exist in 1985, but the whole story sort of takes place out of history. I imagine Bub in an abandoned Amazon warehouse, surrounded by mountains and mountains and mountains of CDs, with a pair of really great industrial. That's the way I see him fading away.
So one final question for Lori. The end seems to go really against, the darkest day of horror there is in the film. Do you think that was a dream sequence? Was that reality? Did George ever talk to you that this actually happened? I asked George, and he gave sort of a vague answer. So
Right, that's right. It's vague. And I always wish they would have made like a sequel, to see what happened with those three characters and Bub. And, they still could. I mean, we'd be old people, and right? No, but
I would probably have parts missing.
yeah, probably. Yeah, but no, it was just you just played the scene as is, and you didn't think about what it meant for the audience. It's like sometimes as an actor, even emotions, especially on stage, sometimes it's not up to the actor sometimes to feel. It's up to the actor to depict something, even a movement just like this, can make, maybe I don't feel anything doing this. It's a gesture, but the audience at the right time in a play, that gesture, it's up to the audience to feel. It's not so much for the actor to be indulgent sometimes, I'm not sure why I said that, but anyway, I'm old, so.
Anybody else here in the audience want to ask a question? Somebody does. You look like you want to ask a question.
Honestly, I almost screw it.
All right, this guy wants to talk to you guys again.
Well, let's keep this thing rolling.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so the movie's really underrated. Well, it's getting its audience now in the last 10, 15 years, right? But when it came out, I wasn't born yet, but when it came out, I'm imagining it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't hailed as the way it is now. Do you guys remember a time whenever you found out it was starting to gain an audience, and this thing had traction and people were actually finding it again? Where you were in your life when you found out?
It's been gradual, don't you think? Has it been gradual for you?
Well, I was completely unaware of this whole world of conventions. And it had already happened by the time I found out. So for me, it was sort of sudden. Bill Mosley, who's hard at work here in another room right now, his wife is one of my wife's best friends.
No kidding.
And we all lived in LA, but we had never met Bill. He was very kind of, reclusive. And one day his wife said something about her friend Donna's husband, Howard. And he said, Howard who? And she said, Howard Sherman. And he said, Bub? And so she called up my wife and said, did Howard ever make like a monster movie or something? A character named Bud or something? And Donna said, yeah, I think he did. He's something. And she asked me about it, and I said, yeah, I made this George Romero film. I played a zombie. And so she told her friend. And Bill was like, I have to meet him. We need to get together. He has to know that there's a world of people who want to meet him. And it was like, wow, what? So we met at a Starbucks, and Bill told me about this whole thing.
That's
And
cool.
I was dumbfounded. I had, what? Okay. And so that's Bill was my way into this world. But it was already happening, you know, by the time I found out. That was like back in, I don't know, 10 years ago or so.
All right, guys, put your hands together for Lori Cardell, Howard Sherman, Day of the Dead. Thank you so much.